Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Here's a headline from you today. Ripple's general counsel takes aim at Gensler after his Supreme Court remark. The general counsel of Ripple is Ripple's top in-house lawyer, who is Stewart Aldridges. And he asks a pretty simple question. I'll share with you exactly how he phrased it, but effectively what he's getting at here is that what Kim Jong-Gensler has said is so absurd that Stewart Aldridges, Ripple's general counsel here, is asking, does he literally not know what he's talking about, or is he lying? That's effectively what he's stating. That's the question right there. Now, my answer on this, after looking through the specifics, is that Gary Gensler is a straight out liar. To me, I have zero doubt in my mind, because I do not believe that he is stupid. I don't believe he's incompetent. I just think he's evil. I think he's a bad person. That's my personal opinion. So I'm going to run through that. I also have a couple comments from a library, which is currently being sued into oblivion by the SEC, though we should have final word on the verdict and that summary judgment any moment, frankly. But there's something that was stated by library, which I don't recall having seen before. And attorney John Deaton actually chimed in on this because it has to do with the actual court proceedings, because attorney John Deaton was actually there in person, mind you. And I just want to share with you some of what they're stating that the SEC is actually arguing. And I've shared with you a number of things that they've stated over time, but this particular one I don't recall having seen before, and it caught my attention, and it's completely absurd. It is bonkers. And then there was also this headline from the Crypto Basic. Senator Toomey bashes SEC chairman for considering most crypto security. It's a fun one, man. Nobody is on your side, Kim Jong-Gensler. Just take your ball and go home. Now, do be clear at the outset, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun, damn it. And if you don't like it, well, you can just get out. All right, into the first piece now. Stewart Aldridges, general counsel at Ripple, took aim at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission chair after the latter misstated that the Supreme Court test is set to determine whether or not a token is an unregistered security. On Thursday, Gensler appeared before the U.S. Senate Banking Committee to defend the agency's somewhat controversial stance on cryptocurrency regulation. Yes, that's putting it lightly. Somewhat controversial? How about highly controversial? Piece continues. During an exchange with cryptocurrency-friendly Senator Pat Toomey, Republican Pennsylvania, Gensler stated that there is no one spectrum of decentralization since many factors have to be taken into consideration. Now, I'll pause to state, because I'm an intellectually honest person, in a general sense, I would actually agree with that, but the problem is decentralization, whether or not something is or is not decentralized, plays exactly into one of the four prongs in the Howey test. So if something is completely decentralized, then that particular prong isn't satisfied, which means that it can't be a security. So yes, it's true to state that it's not the only factor, which is effectively what he was communicating there, but it seems disingenuous because that's not how this goes down. Like, you need to consider, yes, fine, the totality of it, but if even one prong isn't satisfied, then whatever it is that you're applying the Howey test to is not a security. So that's why, to me, that does still seem a bit disingenuous even there. And so here's what Stewart Aldridges said after Gensler's nonsense show the other day when he was getting grilled by Pat Toomey and others. He wrote on Twitter, excuse me, folks, in today's Senate Banking Committee hearings, Chair Gensler misstated the Supreme Court test to determine what is and isn't a security. Was it intentional, or does he really not know the law, which is worse? Now, either is bad. Either is bad. And I think he's straight up lying. But was it intentional, or is he actually so ill-informed, which would get into like an area of incompetency? I don't think he's incompetent. And so then to clarify further, Stewart already explained what he was thinking by retweeting that, and then he added this. He said, Gensler said it's a security if, quote, the investing public is anticipating profits based on the efforts of a common enterprise, end quote. The courts already rejected that because it collapses two separate Howey prongs into one, and, quote, We do not interpret the Howey test to be so easily satisfied, end quote. This is not the law, period. And so that's what Stewart already had to say. And I've noticed this type of crap before. Sometimes he pretends like there are 3 prongs in the Howey test. He started doing that about a year ago. That's nonsense. And then he conveniently eliminates the one that the prong has to do with common enterprise, most typically anyway. So what Stewart Alderati is pointing out here is that Gary Gensler, again, is attempting to just not follow the law, but just collapse 2 prongs into one. As if the facts and circumstances can then be satisfied purely by that. Because if that's the case, I mean, if you're talking about the investing public, man, looks like it's satisfied then, right? But that's a bunch of garbage, isn't it? Yes, of course it is. And the official library Twitter account jumped in and wrote the following, and this is what I was referencing at the outset of the video, that I hadn't seen this particular point. Maybe I just missed it. But there's a really BS argument that was made by the SEC attorney. His name is Mr. Jones. And here's what Library had to say about this. He said, there was an interesting back and forth in our case where the judge hypothesizes a set it and forget it coin where you explicitly promise you will never improve it or market it. SEC appears to believe mere ability for price movement is sufficient to make it a security. So what he's actually talking about, and here I don't really want to read this whole thing. If you want to pause, here's the first slide that he shared from the Detroit court transcript, and I'll move to the second one now, and you can pause if you want to read that too. But effectively, what the judge was getting at is saying, hey, I want to understand your point of view, so help me to understand what you're arguing. And then he threw out this hypothetical where he was saying, okay, what if there's a coin where whoever created it says, I'm never going to work on this damn thing ever again, right? Is because that's a factor, right? Common enterprise in particular. That's what I think he was getting at. But I'm just never going to work it again. If it goes up, then that's because the market decided it goes up, and if it goes down, then that's because the market decided that it goes down. And so that's why Library here noted the SEC appears to believe mere ability for price movement is sufficient to make it a security. So let's expand upon how ridiculous this is, because Attorney John Deaton saw that tweet from Library, and he shared his own perspective because, again, he was in the court when this stupid argument was made, and it's even worse than what it sounds like. Check this out. John Deaton wrote, I remember this moment during the oral argument. Although the SEC attorney initially said he would have to think about it, he ended up saying it can be said that anyone could expect a profit. It doesn't require them to actually expect profits. Think about that for a moment. So think about that. And it's a hypothetical scenario. There's no development whatsoever. That doesn't matter. Forget about centralization, decentralization, or developers building on top. That's not even just saying, okay, what if it's just moving and it's based on what people speculating in the market want it to be? And then, so this guy didn't have an answer. You can look here in the second part of the transcript that Library shared. It's right at the bottom. He said, Your Honor, I may have to think about that. I've never seen an instance solely like that. Well, again, it's a hypothetical, so fine. But he wasn't sure. But then he came back later and said, if anyone could expect a profit, then bam, right there, it's a security. So think about what that means. This SEC asshat attorney says that even if 100% of people who bought a token, which isn't even being developed, like nobody's even developing it, but let's say 100% of people that still buy the thing do not expect a profit, the fact that they could have expected a profit, that makes it a security. So not even that they're expecting profit, that they could expect a profit. Do you see how twisted that is? Like it's that is so far outside of Howey. Look, I'm not an attorney. I know that. Come on, man. This is ridiculous. Am I a lawyer yet? Does it count? I've been covering this long enough and learning. Am I a lawyer now officially? How does this guy not know that? It's hard to believe. Like, I don't know this Mr. Jones attorney. I don't know if maybe he is incompetent. But I tend to think the vast majority of the time the SEC says stuff that doesn't make sense. It's because they have bad intent. I think there may be some instances where they just straight up mess up fine, but I think most of it is just really bad, evil intent. They just want to win. That's what it looks like to be. Which is why Gary Gensler and the SEC, rightfully so, are just getting ripped to shreds. Look at this headline from the Crypto Basic. Senator Toomey bashes SEC chairman for considering most cryptos security. According to Gary Gensler, chairman of the SEC, nearly all crypto tokens fit the definition of traditional security and should be registered and regulated as such. He made his case to skeptical members of the Senate Banking Committee, who pushed him for more information on his opinion that while Bitcoin functions similarly to a commodity, most tokens are comparable to standard stocks. Pat Toomey, the top Republican on the panel, argued that crypto tokens have differentiating factors that should be considered when developing a regulatory framework. Namely, tokens have varying degrees of decentralization. They do not have a financial claim on the issuer, and they can typically be settled in real time without intermediaries. Gensler said that the Supreme Court has already ruled on what defines security, and that there is a well-known test that with many factors used to determine if most tokens are a security. And here's a quote from Gensler. There are many factors, he said, responding to Toomey's question. It's not one spectrum of decentralization versus decentralization. So that part of the quote was shared also in the other article. So think about this, though. Pat Toomey here is pointing out something that I've been saying since this damn lawsuit against Ripple began. Because he's acknowledging that there are varying degrees of decentralization. He understands that that has a direct impact on whether or not something could or could not be considered a common enterprise, which is a prong of the Howey test. Couldn't be more obvious. Couldn't be more damn clear. Gary Gensler likes to pretend that's not a thing, but that's all it is. It's a make-believe. It's a fantasy land. It's stupid. And so there was this clip here where Pat Toomey, rather, after this Senate banking hearing, he was on, it looks like it was Bloomberg's channel. And I'm not going to play the clip. It went on for over a minute, but Senator Pat Toomey shared it on his official Twitter account. And I just wanted to note that, Patrick Toomey in this particular clip says that Kim Jong Gensler refuses to share the framework the SEC uses to determine which cryptos are securities. So think about this. Gary Gensler is using some sort of framework to determine that, certainly his perspective, and fine, there's no official decree from the SEC, but there might as well be, says Bitcoin looks like a commodity. Almost everything else, though, looks like a security. So this is where Library jumped in and just is using simple logic to point out how absurd and offensive this is. So Library wrote to Senator Pat Toomey on Twitter and said, think about the incentives Gary Gensler is setting when he says only Bitcoin is not a security. Should the only way you're allowed to innovate in America be if you hide your identity from the government? So pause there. The only reason that Bitcoin also has not been sued into oblivion is because nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. That's it. If it were a known factor, you better believe that Gary Gensler and the SEC would be coming after him, right? Or maybe, who knows, at this point, maybe they feel like it's too late after all the public statements they want to save face. But if, in particular, if it were earlier, say it was over half a decade ago, if Gary Gensler were in charge and we knew who Satoshi Nakamoto was, do you not think the SEC would have sued? I mean, come on, right? And then Library, this is where they highlight the degree to which the logic is just broken here, and it's just so stupid. It's so stupid. Library says, it's pretty basic logic to understand that if Bitcoin is not a security, a set of steps must exist that can be followed for other tokens to not be securities. Why can't the SEC say what those steps are? How can not a single token have followed them in 13 years? I love that tweet. So, clearly there's a framework there. Pat Toomey saying we don't get to see the framework, and Library's kind of echoing that sentiment. Right. But there must be a framework that they're using to come to conclusions. Basic logic here. Why won't they just tell us what the framework is? Because they're disingenuous, and it's not about doing what's right or legal. It's about them winning and expanding their power over the crypto asset class. These people are monsters. Absolute monsters. I am not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.